Hello all, this is my Module 6 discussion video presentation on the basics of hypertrophy, a desired muscular adaptation for sports performance training. When we're talking about sports performance, the goal of hypertrophy is to increase muscle cross-sectional area for the purpose of increasing force production. More myosin and actin cross bridges results in more force being produced, all other things being equal, means more displacement. That can be displacement of a baseball or a hockey puck, displacement of an opponent, or displacement of the body through space. The physiological mechanism for hypertrophy is known as mechanotransduction. This is outside the scope of this video, but the basics are that mechanical stress is perceived by mechanoreceptors on the muscle cell, and this is converted to chemical signals in the mTOR pathway, which promote increased protein turnover and net protein synthesis. One of the first questions with hypertrophy is the question of how much volume is necessary. Generally, we think of hypertrophy training as involving high volume and low intensities. However, there is a great deal of evidence for higher intensity training actually producing better hypertrophy results for sports performance. For example, Ammer-Thallingam et al. 2017 examined German volume training, which is an extreme form of hypertrophy training involving a 10 by 10 protocol. They compared a group performing the 10 by 10 protocol and a 5 by 10 protocol and actually found greater gains in lean body mass and strength in the 5 by 10 group, meaning less chance of overtraining and increased performance. An interesting thought experiment with regard to hypertrophy training is the fact that Olympic weightlifters who perform, generally speaking, very low volumes of high intensity of almost maximal lifts often display high degrees of muscular hypertrophy, despite not conforming to how we generally conceive of this type of training. This is likely due to the high intensity of their training and the fact that they have hypertrophied largely type 2 muscle fibers. Ogborn and Schoenfeld 2014, Schoenfeld being a noteworthy researcher in this area, discussed this fact that loads above 60% 1RM, generally speaking, are going to produce hypertrophy of type 2 muscle fibers. When we consider that type 2 muscle fibers are fast twitch muscle fibers, this is going to be more advantageous for sports performance training for those participating in high power sports. When considering programming variables, frequency can be 3 to 5 times per week. Sets and reps is highly variable and is dependent on the phase. It should be varied across a periodized program. As we've discussed, all of these things work together to hypertrophy type 1 or type 2 muscle fibers. There are also other considerations such as whether or not drop sets or pyramids or even mechanical changes such as blood flow restriction training may be used for hypertrophy. Generally speaking, however, when we're above 60% 1RM, we're training type 2, and when we are below 60% 1RM, we're training type 1. This also relates to density. When we're looking to train fast twitch muscle fibers through high intensity training, we need to give athletes 3 minutes or more of rest, whereas type 1 can have less rest. Nutrition is also outside the scope of this video, but an important consideration. If the substrates, specifically protein, are not available for muscle protein synthesis, the mechanotransduction mentioned earlier will not result in actual net protein synthesis. One of my first recommendations is the barbell back squat for hypertrophy, not just because of Squattober, but because it is one of the primary exercises for sports performance, which involves a large muscle mass, meaning that the mechanotransduction is taking place over a large section of the body, resulting in more hypertrophy and coordination across joints, which has great transfer to sports performance. For the upper body, primary exercise for hypertrophy that's recommended is bench press. And finally, the power clean, which is going to add many pulling muscles in the back that may not be hypertrophied through the bench press. Practical applications. It's important for sports performance to choose multi-joint exercises involving large muscle mass and coordination across joints. There is no one set and rep scheme. It's important to vary sets, reps, and intensities, but to focus on higher intensities, generally speaking, in order to avoid overtraining and train fast twitch muscle fibers. That would mean over 60% of 1RM. These are the resources for this video, and thank you for watching.